No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, we're talking about the 4 zones of thought leadership in this series. 2 Mondays ago, we discussed big picture things like vision, strategy, and culture. And then last week, we talked about how that can influence the plan you put in place, the tactical nature of the work. You know, things like solving problems on the fly, empowering your people to do so without making them feel like they're on their own, but while also making sure they kind of hold to the bigger picture. On this third part of the series, we're going to be talking about the zone of thought leadership that has to do with others, the development, the inclusivity, the well-being, a lot of the things that really have become more important to leaders over the last few years than I think they have been in the past. The big picture stuff and the tactical stuff have always been important, though what they are have changed. I think that the concept of thought leadership as it relates to other people, the people who report to you and the people who are your peers, I think that has kind of taken a seat at the table as an equal to things like the big picture things and creating a plan, whereas maybe it was just something to consider in the past. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think it's a great topic for us to talk through and talk about. And again, in the context of these topics, we're saying this is about how do you think about this? This is actual thought leadership. How are you considering these things? What is your plan to make sure these things are coming to life? And when you think about development, inclusion, well-being, to your point, so much of this now is not just the self, but more importantly, like the others around you, and what's the impact that you're going to have, not just to your direct reports, but to your peer group and maybe even to your direct leaders above you. Like what are the things that you are doing to make sure that your impact is being felt across the, from a 360 standpoint, but also that you are really thinking about how you're going to approach this work and what are the things that you're going to do or borrow from, or what's your framework. When you talk about something like development, like what does that actually mean to you? Well, how are you going to approach development? Are you thinking about just maybe the tools that are given to you by the organization, or is there a different theory that you want to implement?
Right. So the reason why I think this has become so important is because it's just not something that can be done on the fly or that you can kind of hope works out. It's obvious that if you're talking about the things we talked about last week around creating a tactical plan, you don't just kind of throw spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. You actually have to think about it and plan for things. I think a lot of leaders over the past have thought about this topic around the well-being of their team and development as just something that they will kind of figure out as they go. They kind of have to just do it. You kind of learn by doing. And there is an element of that. You do have to learn by doing, in that you can't just become great at it by studying it or thinking about it and then all of a sudden it's perfect. You will make mistakes along the way, but it's also a miss to not think about it in advance and do some planning around what you would do in certain situations prior to them happening, and then just hope it's going to work out well. I think that can be a recipe for disaster, especially when you're talking about members of your team who might have issues when it comes to their well-being, or if they are looking for development and not getting it in the way that they want it. That we've seen numerous studies over the last few years that say one of the top reasons people leave organizations is just a lack of personal growth and development, that that their boss isn't taking the time that they believe their boss should take in order to develop them or to get them ready for the next role or for the the next stage of their life. And so development isn't just something that has to be kind of like, oh, I'm available to develop my people, and when they come to me, I will say yes, sure. No, this is something you think about in advance, because you have a finite amount of time and resources and energy, and if you don't kind of have the ability to approach your people proactively to figure out what it is that they're looking for, when it's time for them to approach you, you're already going to be behind the curve of what they expect. Otherwise, they wouldn't be asking to begin with.
Yeah, I was having a great conversation the other day with a leader around this very specific topic, and we were just talking about how do you influence? How do you prepare to have influence with your team? How do you, what kind of guides you into like how do you start to build out strategies when it comes to things like development and that type of stuff? And I was sharing with him like let me tell you like through my kind of lenses of vision, clarity, and support, and like why these things really matter when I'm thinking about stuff like development or things like culture of a team. And so I was walking him through. I was like, first with the vision part, I was like, I want to talk to you and say, all right, Chris, let's talk about this. Like your career here, what you're working on, what are some of the goals that you're trying to achieve? What are some of the things that you're working on personally and professionally? What do you feel are your natural skills? And what are the things that you think, that you'd like to sharpen or get better at? Or what are things that you've seen mentors do that you're like, I wish I could do that one day? And we have this conversation. And then that unfolds into like, so let's talk about that here. Like how do we attach what we do every day, the work that we do every day, and what we're looking to accomplish to the bigger picture of what you're trying to accomplish in life. So like, let's tie those things together. Let's make sure that we have a longer term vision of where we're going and why we know we're going to have the really, really good days. We know we're going to have the tougher days. We know that we're going to make some mistakes and get some coaching and some feedback. Like, let's have that conversation so that we know this is the journey that we're on and really have a clear vision. Then we get into the clarity part. And so now that we've kind of got that out of the way, let's talk about our current roles. What's your current role? What's my current role? How do these things work together? What are my responsibilities? What are your responsibilities? And so I'm having this conversation with him to help him start to think about and shape what does this look like for himself, and where are the spaces that he wants to lean into, and how does he want to kind of have this approach with intention of his leadership and the development strategies that he wants to implement. And then, of course, like whatever company you work for, they're going to have developmental things and tools and resources and trainings, and those things kind of fold into what you're talking about. But if you haven't established that for yourself, if you're not thinking about it in that way, then all of a sudden your development is really like your development strategy is only based upon what's given to you as the development strategy of another person or the company. And I think when you're talking about thought leadership, again, this is where we are thinking about how are we preparing for that? What exactly are we doing when we're approaching these things as leaders? And is this reflective of our own kind of thought leadership, or is this just me executing on the company plan?
Right. I love that. You're talking through this, and I'm thinking we're getting really real inception here, because in the process of talking about through the last 3 weeks, big picture things and then more tactical plan. Now we're talking about others. You almost have a big picture and tactical as a part of others when you're talking about going through this with other people. So as you're helping people develop themselves, and as you're developing them, and you're talking about well-being, well, you have to have a big picture plan when it comes to their development and their well-being, and then you have to have a plan in order to put it into action, an actual tactical plan that you can sit down with them and do. So there's almost a kind of a sub-process within this when it comes to other people, because really everything you do as a leader has to be in the context of what is the larger thing this is serving? And then do I actually have some sort of a plan to put in action here, or am I just kind of hoping it works out? If you go through this in your own head in advance of doing this, you're more likely to have it be successful. When it comes to things like inclusion isn't just hiring the right people. It's about making the people who are there feel like they have a voice, and that they understand that they're there for a reason, and that they have the psychological safety needed in order to speak up when it's time to speak up. A person, you could have the right representation in the room. It could check off all the boxes and it can look great on paper, but if no one is raising their hand when it comes to challenging the status quo or speaking up when something needs to be said, that doesn't mean you've done a great job with inclusion. It just means that you've maybe started the ball out the right way, but the real work is done once you have the people there, and making sure they A, stay there, but B, that they understand that they have a role to play now that they are here. They have a responsibility to the team, and if you just look at this concept of thought leadership when it comes to others as what you do for others, I think you're selling them short. They have to have an equal stake in that process. Otherwise, it will become something that is just your responsibility to do. This is not your responsibility to do. It's the responsibility of you with them to accomplish this together.
Yeah, and these are topics, I think, the inclusion and well-being spaces. This is where I would tell you personally, reading books, listening to audiobooks, watching TED Talks, like reading articles, blogs, podcasts, anything that you can get content-wise here, it has been super helpful because this is a new space for everybody. Like, I'll just put that out there. You've got people that are professionals that have degrees in this. They understand the human psyche. They have a lot of educational elements of how you do these things in places like therapy and things like that. But when it comes to the workspace and the workforce and being at work all day, I was watching a live podcast the other day. And one of the guests they had on was talking about kind of this idea of like kind of the like dealing with triggers and things that are like triggers that can slow you down and that type of deal. And so my question was like, well, like how do you create a space that kind of talks about and addresses this like in a day-to-day standpoint? Because what you're saying is that we all have them. What you're saying is that these things can be kind of worked on and reduced, or at least you can have a sense of what's causing them, and then choose to do something differently or be conscious of it and know what you need to do. Like you kind of have all these things, but like when you're working all day, when you're with a team of people, I was just like, how do you bring that to life day to day? And again, I'm just curious right now. I'm asking the questions because again, these are things that I think as leaders, we have to put more time and effort into learning, to understanding, to then be able to go in and say, okay, here's how I can kind of create some of this space. Here's the intention that I can have when I have a meeting to make sure that there's balance and that each voice is being heard. There's a little things that can happen that are tactics or that are kind of like skills that you can build or learn to make that environment much better in those two spaces. So I just wanted to underline that these are some of the things where how much time you put into educating yourself is going to be the thing that's going to be the difference in how you lead people.
Right. I heard a long time ago, one of my favorite kind of quotes from a mentor is that people are messy. And when you're talking about leading others and making sure that they feel included and making sure that they have a sense of well-being, and you are taking that responsibility on to kind of help with that, they won't always, and when I say they won't always, they almost never will act or respond or react like a textbook says they're going to. And so, just hearing something that you like from a podcast or a TED Talk or reading something that kind of resonates with you, it doesn't stop there. It just because it resonated with you, it doesn't mean that when you put that into action, they're going to react the way that the TED Talker said they're going to react. They might react completely differently. And in the moment, that's going to be triggering to you. That's going to be like, oh my gosh, I thought I had the skill to do this because TED Talk told me that this is how you'd react when I said this, but you're not reacting this way. And so it becomes really important to kind of consume a lot of different aspects and kind of theories on what this can be, so that in the moment you have more tools in your tool belt in order to deal with it. But at the end of the day, nothing will do this for you other than actually just doing it and being able to, in the moment, take a breath and move forward, knowing that, hey, you know what, you have as many tools as possible, but the ultimate kind of tool or the deciding factor as to whether or not it will go right is, do you have this person's best interests at heart or your own? So are you trying to fix their problem because it's better for you if their problem is fixed, or are you trying to fix their problem because it's what's right for them and it's what will help them move forward with the organization? So if you're going forward with that mindset, with that level of empathy, then it's really hard to mess this up if that's your kind of guiding light, because they will see that and you'll get the grace needed if it doesn't really necessarily go perfect the first time out. And as people start to have these interactions with you, you'll get better and better at it over time. And so again, it's this kind of balance of, you need to plan. You need to have kind of considerations for this in advance, not just hope it's going the right way, but there is an element of there's only so much planning you can do in the moment when it's happening. it's hard. You can't just like pause time and go, this isn't going the way I thought it was going to. Let me go find another TED Talk. Like you have to be able to just to make it happen and go forward, asking for the kind of the partnership with the person, if it's something you need in the moment. And if you have set that up correctly because of the little interactions you've had with that person day by day by day before this big problem comes up, I think that person is more than likely to say, yeah, let's do this together. I need your help, and I can tell that you have my best interest at heart.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 minute hack. But first, a few words from our sponsors.
All right, for this episode's 1 minute hack, here's what I want you to do. Get out your pen and paper, and I want you to write down 3 words at the top of the page. So it's like 3 columns: development, inclusion, and well-being. And I want you to put down 2 or 3 bullet points under each one in terms of your plan that you have in place in order to help with those 3 items for the people on your team. What is your plan for helping develop the people on your team? What is your plan for making people feel included on the team? And what is your plan for ensuring the well-being of each member of your team? And these can be things that you are doing proactively, or they can be things that need to be done when the person comes to you, but it can't be all in one area or the other. There has to be a mix of both. Things that you're doing proactively in advance and ways that you will respond when people come to you, letting you know that there is a problem. If you are unable to put some bullet points down in each of those 3 columns, then this is where you have to kind of focus your learning when it comes to finding podcasts and TED Talks and books to read on that particular topic. If you have those bullet points you can put down and you have a plan in place for how you'll respond to these people and how you'll be proactive on these topics, then that's great. Move forward and keep doing those things. But again, this needs to be something that is planned, but also something that is in spirit of the fact that this is a partnership and not just something that is all on them or all on you.
Yeah, I think it's a great 1 minute hack, and these are. I think this quadrant of the 4 is when you're talking about the thought leadership, ideals that you have when it comes to others around you. This is one of those moments where it's kind of like, is my plan, or is my plan what I've been trained to have as the plan? So in other words, like when I talk about development, am I only talking about the things that I've been taught from the company that I work for? Or am I talking about development of like, this is how I see development. This is how I see these things. This is how I want to impact others. This is the lens that I use. This is the platform that I have. And it just so happens, or this is how I implement then whatever organization, company, strategy, training, whatever that we've got going on. This is how these things feed into that. But this is truly mine as a leader. I think, to your point in the hack here, if you're not confident saying, yes, like this is mine, this is the time to say, let me go do some research. Let me grab some things. Let me find out what I'm going to borrow from. Because again, none of us have something from scratch. I've taken pieces from different leaders, from different books, from different theories, from different ideas, and I've kind of put them together to say, this is me. This is what I think works well for me. This is what I stand for as a leader. This is the impact that I want to have on others. But you have to take the time to kind of give yourself the perspective from a lot of different sources to get to that point.
Right. And no matter what company you work for, there will be tools provided. But if those tools aren't things that resonate with you or that aren't in spirit of whatever your personal value system is, it'll just be something you're passing along. Like, oh, here are the tools, right? They were given to me, I'm giving them to you. That's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as being an active participant in the development and the inclusion and the well-being of your people. And so these have to be things that you, or maybe they are, right? Maybe some of these tools that you have with your organization, you read them and they speak to you. They go, oh, this is amazing. I love this. I would use this for myself. Those are great tools. Those are the ones that you can use and put forward, because it's not just you passing along information, it's you actively using those tools with the people. And so there has to be a mix of that. But if none of these tools are things that resonate with you, then this is where you have to start developing your own, because it can't just be you being a middleman, passing along information. It has to be something where your employees feel like you are actively engaged in their well-being and their development and them feeling included, not just that you are the spokesperson for whatever the company vision is on development and well-being and inclusion.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.